So it is cold and it is rainy, and that is just the vibe. Hey! Thank you for joining the Escape With Me Book Club. Escape with me, Sam Reiner.
And Caitlin.
Into our most recent read. Come with us as we evade reality and go into detail about a new book. We'll be covering the book from beginning to end, so there will be spoilers. Today we're going to London, England, and then to Neverland. Published November 21st, 2019. Straight On Till Morning is the 8th installment of the Disney's Twisted Tales series. Frustrated after years of being misunderstood by her family, Wendy decides to make her own adventure by trading in Peter Pan's shadow to Captain Hook so that she can get to Neverland. Can she right this wrong before she, Peter Pan, and all of Neverland is destroyed? Or will she find that this is another story she doesn't belong in? So background on this, I loved Peter Pan growing up.
Yes, adored him.
I kind of love Peter Pan 2 better than the first one, which is the wrong opinion to have, and I know it. But I love a lot of the direct-to-DVD sequels that came out during that time.
Yeah, for sure. I don't recall watching Peter Pan 2, the animated one. I recall watching the live-action one with Jason Isaacs as Hook and the dad, and I loved that version. Did you ever watch that one?
Hook?
No, not Hook. It's literally called Peter Pan. It's just a live-action version, so it's all live-action characters, and Jason Isaacs is Hook.
No, I don't think I have.
Hook is the one with Robin Williams?
Yes.
Yeah, that one's good too. But no, because the soundtrack, if you've been on TikTok or Instagram, whatever, like I know I've heard the sound bite come through, and it's also been used a lot at Disney World, even though no one really acknowledges that movie was a thing that was made. But love the live-action versions.
And I'll concede I definitely had a crush on him because he's a redhead.
Fair.
I feel like that just answers all of my childhood crushes for the most part.
Redhead boy.
Yes. A redhead that likes adventure. I mean, heck, I liked Ariel.
Fair.
That's all she was. She was a redhead who wants adventure.
A redhead who wants adventure. That's your one checkbox.
Technically two.
Well, fair.
So that's kind of my background with it, but I was never jealous of Wendy. I loved Wendy, and I loved her daughter, and I go back and forth on Tinkerbell, honestly.
So that is totally fair. And then, hot take, this is probably the best character growth we've ever seen of Tinkerbell in any Peter Pan rendition is in this book.
Oh, heck yeah. No, they completely redid her personality for the Tinkerbell movies, which I'm okay with.
Oh, that's fair. I never saw any of those.
She becomes very nice. Let's just say it like that. And she gets a bunch of friends, which is also cool. The author doesn't agree with those renditions.
No. Well, and let's be fair. The original story, you're playing into the pixie, fae-ish, fiend kind of energy, but she also just come across as a petulant jealousy.
Thinking more Puck than anything else.
Yeah.
Age level, still YA. This was very tame for a Liz book.
For Liz, yes. I did think it started tackling more of the social issues in a really direct way instead of the violent issues.
Yeah.
That really threw me. I don't think I was expecting that from Peter Pan of all books.
But she does it well.
I agree. I actually think she pulled it off.
Because we've had issues with her in the past tackling social issues, and it's not great.
Yeah.
But hey, Liz can handle sexism in this book because she's tackling like Aladdin, where I hated it.
Yes, that is fair. If we look at her growth from Aladdin, very different vibes.
Liz is, oh no, but you're a woman. He's like, but women are amazing.
Yeah.
I still think about that scene at least once a month. But yeah, she handles it really well. I will say it right now. I don't know if Jin Kalanita just reset my brain on Liz, but this was really good. I think it gave it 4 stars, which is the first time I've given her 4 stars in a while.
Yeah, I don't know. I struggled with this one a little bit. And I think it comes down to what you did for the rating of this is a YA novel, and I need to just taper my expectations of what is supposed to happen in YA novels, because we'll get into it, but I thought the plot was weird and it was pretty basic, and I listened to these in audiobooks, like the 9-hour audiobook at like 1.2 speed. The first 7 hours were set up.
Yeah.
And everything was resolved in the last 2. I'm so tired of this.
Yeah. Okay, I take it back. I'm not going to be like, oh, I wonder if Jen call Anita. She absolutely did. Because every time we hit a point where, it wasn't great, but at least she's trying.
Yeah, that's fair.
Conceal Don't Feel wrecked me because I realized how bad it could be. And so I gave Liz a lot of grace.
Yeah, and it has been. The last 2 books were Jen, so we haven't seen Liz since Part of Your World.
Which was still bad.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
But even that one, I feel like if I read it, I would give it 1 more star for, hey, at least she's trying.
You're trying, yeah. We have nowhere to go but up with Liz, unfortunately.
Jen Colonita wrecked me. So, content warning, language, PG-13, sexual assault, blood, murder, gore, racism, torture, dark magic, and child abuse is mentioned several times throughout. That's short.
Yeah, for Liz.
For Liz, that's way short.
Yeah.
Craziness. So, judge a book by its cover. I kind of thought that Wendy would become the villain, because not up until this point, because for Milan, she's on the cover, and then Anna and Elsa are on the cover. So this isn't the first time the hero's on the cover.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There was something about it where I thought she was going to be the villain.
Well, for me, it was the question of, well, what happens if the first time she goes is with Captain Hook? My initial instinct was like, okay, so she doesn't have any experience with Neverland, so she can be shaped by Captain Hook.
Yeah.
Influenced by him, and maybe be taught to think that Pan is the villain and Captain Hook is innocent. That's immediately where my mind went. And I was like, okay, that might be interesting. That's not what happened, y'all.
No. Although the question is not a lie. I'm going to be happy about that because as we've learned, that's not always the case.
I don't think any of them have been lies.
Aladdin.
Yeah, that's fair. What if Aladdin never found the lamp? That's fair.
So I also thought something funky was going to happen with her shadow because she has a shadow on the cover, and that wasn't wrong. I don't know. I think the cover itself, erasing Liz Braswell's name from it, the cover itself kind of got me a little hype.
Yeah, the cover honestly is pretty good.
It's real good. And maybe this book's probably a 3-star, but I give it 4 because, hey, she's trying.
Yeah, I feel like it just falls into mediocre. I did like the coloring on it. We always talk about, I didn't even notice the stuff with her shadow until you mentioned it. And I was like, oh, you're right. Her shadow is on it. And her shadow does play a little bit of a role. And with the ship and Skull Island and everything, I was like, that's a good cover.
Yeah, with London in the background. They put some money into this.
Yeah.
You even got Tinkerbell on it?
Yeah, it feels all very subtle, too. I did like the cover.
It's so good. Oh, also, just so you know, this is going to be the second graphic novel.
I did see that, yeah. Which, okay.
I don't know how they're picking these. Maybe sales? I don't know. But yeah, I'm totally fine with this one being a graphic novel. That seems much more reasonable than Ariel because of all the fun scenes with all the weird plants and creatures, and that seems great.
That's fair. And I am excited to see the little bit older Wendy. I think that'll be cute.
This is a great pick for the graphic novel. I'm absolutely for it. But to get on talking about the book itself, so yeah, Wendy is a little bit older, which makes sense for a YA, but she's 16, and okay.
Here we go.
First of all, it opens up and Liz is not a fan of London.
No, not at all.
Not at all. And maybe she loves London in and of itself, but she hates the weather.
Which, I mean, fair. Everything I know about London weather is that it sucks.
Yeah.
It's akin to like Seattle with smog.
Yeah, especially in this time period. But okay, here's the thing. So she writes Peter Pan stories even though she's an adult, quote unquote. And all the stuff that she does, people consider her childish, and she's talking about make-believe and da-da-da-da-da. And so that's canon her personality, right?
Yeah.
But she decides to stop going to school because that would be too childish.
I don't even remember what explanation they gave for why she didn't go to school.
It was literally, I could have kept going to school, but I decided that was too childish. So I decided to stay home and do nothing.
Yeah, even give it "you're being bullied" vibes, right? I need to stay home because I'm being bullied. That would have made more sense than that. I mean, in theory, once she went home, she was given the task of managing the Darling household.
Which, great parentification, mom.
Yeah, right. And like you said, in this time period that they've set it up in, women aren't going all the way through schooling.
Yeah, it was just a very weird pick to be say, oh, that's too childish, so I don't go to school. But also she hates staying home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it didn't make sense, and so I'm going to complain about it. So she stays home, and John and Michael are older now. And by the way, Michael is a brat.
Yeah.
He is the worst.
Yeah, those boys didn't age up very well.
He is the worst, and I will not be talking about him further than that because he made me angry every scene he was in. Because he's rude.
Both Michael and John.
John had his redeeming qualities, such as calling out their mother for never being home and Wendy having to do everything.
Okay, maybe one. But I mean, Michael did the same thing in that scene. Both of them were like, wait, what you did was dumb. Why don't you appreciate her more?
Yeah, at the very end.
But they both had that at the very end, yeah.
Wendy definitely had an older sister vibe in the movies. Maybe even, I would argue, the oldest sibling vibes, such as you have to look after your younger siblings and whatnot. But I don't know. This book went to levels with Miss Darling. She is not a good parent at all. And I didn't get that from the movie.
No, in the movie, you just got it as Wendy was taking on that role. Because, I mean, the movie also played into the whole mothering aspect because Wendy loves and looks up to her mother, so she wants to mimic her mother, right? But in this one, it's more like, no, they're just negligent parents.
Really, though?
Or rather, what I think they're trying to play it off as is that they don't have enough money to stabilize in the society that they're in, so mom is off having to do things, which is why she's not home. But I think that's what they were trying to hint at.
Yeah, but she's doing things that spend money. I don't understand. For example, Wendy is the one that has to get up, get the boys fed, get to class and whatever, and go to school, while her mom just sleeps.
Yeah, sleeps in.
And then just goes on social visits, which, okay, but...
I'm not gonna lie, I low-key was picking up escort vibes. I really thought they were trying to subtly play off that Mrs. Darling was an escort.
Jeez!
Because when she kept referencing her mom, she would talk about her beautiful makeup and her scents and how she would be gone for hours at a time and no one would know where. And she had a quote-unquote late night one day. And I'm like, what are they implying that Mrs. Darling is over here doing? I don't know. My brain did go there at one point. And I'm like, nah, that's a little too much.
Maybe not too dark for Liz, but too dark for this book.
Yeah, agreed.
But yeah, she... Because even in the movie, there's that whole, oh my gosh, Peter Pan, and oh my goodness, did her mom know Peter Pan when she was a girl? None of that. Just neglect.
Yep.
Honestly, the dad came off a little neglectful, but I'm not surprised for the time period. But I'm going to hate on him in this book because he's...
Yeah, he's mean.
He's mean? Heck yeah. But he's, I don't know. In the movie, it came across, he wasn't very fatherly. He was the authoritarian fatherly, but not nurturing or anything like that.
Very similar to Mary Poppins.
Yeah.
How the dad was in Mary Poppins, yeah. But he had a growth arc.
Yeah. I feel like in the book, he doesn't like his kids.
No.
Also, this book is the queen of drops plot lines.
Yes.
They get her a dog? Okay.
Because that's going to make it better.
That too. But they get her a dog. It's a small dog, so she doesn't like it. Fair enough. I like big dogs myself, but whatever. So that's a plot line. These random twins that don't like her but do like her are saying how they're going to try to set her up with a boy. That's dropped immediately. I would have loved that. I want to see it because she tends to tell.
Give me Wendy's attempt at a first date.
Yeah, or just a conversation because she tells a lot of times, oh, I did this, I did that. It's so embarrassing. But I would have loved to have a chance to see her in a social situation trying to play it cool until something comes up and she starts talking about Peter Pan. I would have loved to see that, but we don't get to see that.
No.
Then London takes up a lot of chapters, but also it doesn't. I think it takes up a lot of boring chapters, but but they had the chance to make it kind of interesting, but oh well.
Yeah.
So she writes these stories and notebooks and whatever. And one day her parents find it and their totally sane and measured response is to ship her off to Ireland to nanny 6 kids. What is wrong with you?
Well, and if I remember it right, too, they find the notebook and Mrs. Darling is trying to be like, well, she's a very good writer and her stories are good and blah, blah, blah. And even Wendy's like, well, what about all these other famous authors? And their only retort is, but they're adults. This isn't right for you as a child. That's garbage.
That's the opposite.
Yeah. What are you talking about?
This is perfect for a child, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's such misplaced expectations for sure.
And it's so over the top response for one time finding that out that she's writing stories. And the 2 brothers call them out at the end of the book about this. What was their plan here? Wendy runs their house. It is canonical that this house is falling apart without Wendy being there.
Yep.
You can't hire servants. What is wrong with you?
And then to John's point, why are you sending her to a place wrapped up in fairies and stories and lore? Ireland is a great place to go.
If you have a good imagination, Ireland's filled with myths and fae and all sorts of stuff.
Bad plan.
It's so dumb. I don't understand.
Yeah. It was a plot point to drive Wendy to Neverland.
Yeah, and so she decides that she has to go to Neverland now, which I don't know. There are 1,000 ways we could have done that.
Yep.
The parents just get massacred in this book.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I have no idea. So, like you said, it drives her to go to Neverland. And since she's had... Okay. Peter canonically has visited a bunch of times, just like in the movie, to hear her tell stories about him because he's a little bit of a narcissist.
Yes.
Which we'll get to because I'm curious on your opinions on this. At least in this book's interpretation of Peter Pan.
Well, and I think we as the audience know that Peter Pan had come. But the way I took it was the encounter that you saw in the movie, right, where Peter Pan shows up and then they all have that tumble. That did happen, and that's how she gets left with her shadow.
Yeah.
But then he never actually sees them again. He's always hiding and just listening to the stories.
Yeah.
Which this is, and what we get into later of the lore of Neverland, this is a big leap for me. The idea that Wendy has one encounter with this mythical creature, Peter Pan, and then just starts developing all these stories.
Yeah.
And somehow leaves Tinkerbell out of it because, you know, we get to later, she doesn't know who Tinkerbell is when she first meets her. So I guess Tinkerbell wasn't in the original encounter like it was in the movies.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It felt like a big stretch, like we've talked about with Liz in the series in general, that they rely a little bit on your understanding of the original tale and then twist it. I mean, that's the whole point. But they don't then explain those gaps. It doesn't make sense to me that, again, one encounter with Peter Pan would then result in her coming up with Neverland. I don't know. And Hook, if I dream to Hook, he'll show up. That was a little bit of a stretch.
That made no sense, but that's beside the point.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to remember, and I should have watched the movie, but in the movie, I felt like that one encounter, she already had his shadow, didn't she? And she sewed the shadow on for him, right?
Oh gosh, I don't remember. Your audience is going to have to correct us if I'm wrong.
Oh, I don't know. But Neverland is explained as just this thing that's on everybody's brain in London. It's just a shared experience that everyone dreams of Neverland.
That I get. It's the escapism of children. It's the imagination of children. Peter Pan was a creature who would real life go and visit kids. That's how he gets the Lost Boys and blah, blah, blah. But I'm just like, how after one interaction do you know all of that? How are you starting to create that shared consciousness?
Yeah, I don't know. But back to the thing that I'm stuck on. John and Michael, growing up, believed in Peter Pan. They're growing up now, and it's unsurprising to me that John is all, oh, but logic, because that's kind of how he's set up in the movie.
Yeah, makes total sense.
But it doesn't make sense if they have his shadow in a drawer.
Yeah. She even tries to write it off as being, eventually when she showed them the proof, they were just like, it's fake. It's just a toy or whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't know, fam. That's not how shadows work. This shadow must just become a limp piece of black satin, I guess. Is that what this thing looks like to them?
I don't understand, because even if, let's say they didn't have the shadow anymore, John is just, oh, nope, we experienced that, but I'm going to ignore it because logic.
Listen, I mean, classic childhood repression. I do get it. I was a little surprised that Michael was as on board as John was because he was the youngest. I think he is like 6 whole years younger than Wendy, so he would have been only 10 or 12 at the time. In this actual story, 10-year-old is still young enough to believe in that kind of stuff, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Again, it's a bunch of plot convenience, and that's what I think I'm finally trying to wrap my head around, is that YA has plot convenience because not fully formed brains that are reading this aren't necessarily asking those questions.
Well, I don't know if that's YA, because there's plenty of YAs that treat their readers like reasonable people, but it might just be Liz's interpretation of YA.
Maybe.
So, yeah, that's all of London.
And she leaves the house and she gets Captain Hook to come and get her.
Yeah.
And they talk on the River Thames, which I thought was wild.
She literally falls asleep and is thinking in her brain, hey, Captain Hook, I have something for you. And he appears.
Yep, that's how she gets Captain Hook's attention. And I'm like, okay, you telling me you've never fallen asleep thinking about Captain Hook in Neverland and he hasn't accidentally popped up in London somehow? Good night.
But can we talk about how the beginning of the book felt almost like the starting of a gothic horror novel? Like Wendy was gonna go to Ireland and it's just gonna be a gothic horror.
Maybe a little bit. Honestly, that would have been super interesting to see her in a different place or whatever, and then how like Neverland works in a different place like that and blah, blah, blah. That wouldn't have been horrible to witness, seeing it fire on her parents.
Alas.
There was already too much setup in this book, and this was part of it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. There is too much setup, but also so many things left open that could have been really interesting. Because forget about the snowball.
Yes.
Forget about the twins. Forget about Ireland.
Yes. All of this, there was so much setup that wasn't relevant and did not actually do anything for the story. And I think that's what got me so infuriated.
London is highly unsatisfying.
Very.
So she meets Hook and makes him promise that in return for the shadow, he's going to give her passage to Neverland and back home. And he says, sure, of course.
Now, I did like that little tit for tat between her and Hook, where she's like, listen, I know you're a crazy pirate. I'm going to make sure that I get the best part out of this deal, right? And I was even sitting there like, okay, I see you changing up your wording, all this kind of stuff. And so then when inevitably he's like, aha, tricked you, I'm like, well, I mean, we all saw that coming somehow. I thought she genuinely did a good job of setting up her ride with Hook.
No, of all the Disney villains, Hook was made for Liz Braswell.
Fair.
She does him so well.
Yes.
He's over dramatic and silly, but also terrifying.
Yep.
Has a strict moral code, but also will double cross you in a second. It was good.
Yeah, she did good with Hook. He reminded me a lot of Captain Barbossa. I feel like she did a really good job with Hook and the pirates.
Yeah. They're kind of rude to her and one is sexual harassing, which Hook shoots him.
Yeah, that was wild. I was like, okay, thanks, man.
And I love how that comes back up later.
Yeah.
I thought that was actually very well done. But yeah, he just shoots him to, I don't know, show off that he's not stable. Because Hook is not stable.
Yeah, not at all. He's cray.
I figured it out real early on. I don't know when you caught on, but I thought Smee was dead.
Yeah. And truth be told, I can't even still logic out how that resolved because the end of the book wrapped up so quickly. I felt like everything just happened at once. I saw your notes. This time I was reading through your notes as I was listening to the book instead of looking at them all at the end. And so I saw your note, why do I get the feeling that Smee is dead and Hook's in denial? I was like, interesting. And I was like, okay, that's a very interesting theory. I do kind of like that. But for me, it was when they were at the witch's house and she was like, oh, but she winked in the wrong direction. But it was because of her bad eyesight. And I'm like, oh no, Smee is 100% a fictional creation of Hook.
Yeah, because that's what happens later on is people are like, Smee never existed. And okay, yeah, that's good. But I don't know. There was something worse about if Smee had been alive and had been a real person versus a figment of Hook's imagination. But I don't know. But Smee doesn't exist, which either way, I do think that was an interesting twist to take it.
For sure.
So Whitney ends up being kind of a mom character to everyone because of course, but then they want her to do laundry and that's too far.
Yeah, that whole interaction with the pirates was honestly funny.
Oh, the first one was hilarious.
Yeah, it was pretty funny where she was just like, why are you guys so incompetent? Let me help. And then they're like, but you're going to be our mom, right? And she was like, how dare you? And I'm like, what have you been doing? She's like, I draw the line of dirty laundry. What? Okay, I guess.
Just have them do their own laundry. And anyway.
Oh, gosh.
I don't understand.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. And I do agree with you, too, in the note you had. Hook basically from the beginning shows the cards of A, that he's crazy and that he's a little unhinged, and B, that he's just going to wreck everything.
Yeah.
She doesn't necessarily put it together because, again, a little bit of it, it's a world she hasn't experienced yet still, and there's a lot of questions, and I think she's just blinding herself to anything that could go wrong just because she wants to be there so bad. But, girl,
But I will give it to her. She doesn't say anything in the moment, which made me worried because Hook's basically like, haha, this will lead me to Peter Pan.
Yep.
And Whitney doesn't react. And so I was worried. I was just thinking, girl, you're denser than the main characters of the last book. I swear to goodness. But as soon as she gets off the island, she's like, cool, I need to go tell Peter Pan that I messed up because he's going to use the shadow to destroy everything. She catches on pretty quick, which made me appreciate it.
Well, but he tells her. They literally have that dinner scene. Again, it's just Pirates of the Caribbean.
I know, that's what I was worried about. I was worried he told her and she didn't get it.
Oh, I thought you meant at their first interaction when she was boarding the ship.
No, I was worried when he says, haha, I'm going to use the shadow, that she's going to be like, huh, I wonder why he wants the shadow. I was worried. But no, that is not what happened. Thank heavens.
Yeah, no. And this is my issue with Wendy on the boat. And I guess it feels problematic, but it's actually written really well, where she's just like, man, I am just a whiny teenage. I need to be better. And she realizes where she's interrupting the flow and blah, blah, blah. And so she finally just settles in and lets people come to her. But the whole issue with this third person limited perspective kind of thing of where you're getting the internal dialogue of the characters all the time is you're just like, oh my gosh, I hope people aren't thinking like this. But like the reality is she's a 16-year-old girl who's been isolated for how many years in her house with just her family and basically being told she's not doing her life right. So yeah, her internal monologue is going to be, I take up too much space. I'm incompetent. I can't do this.
Yeah.
I need to be better, blah, blah, blah. On the one hand, I hate it because it's just so psychologically unhealthy. So from my therapist perspective, I'm like, please be better. Don't act like this. But then I have to take a step back and be like, oh, that's actually pretty realistic given what she was going through.
Yeah. But it's like you said earlier, the pirate ship is also set up for later. Setting up her personality, setting up the characters. There's this dude, Zane.
Yeah.
I thought he was going to be a love interest and be important.
No.
But he's just a pirate with a name, honestly.
Yeah, I think he was just one of the pirates on board because I think he was trying to identify pirates from the original movie and putting names to them.
Yeah, and I thought it was going to be a love interest. Zane's the one that helps her escape when Hook says, haha, I took you to Neverland. I didn't say you could get off my ship, though.
Yeah, I knew he wasn't going to be a love interest because, I mean, canonically, all the men are too old, and that's weird.
Well, for a half a second, I was wondering if he was Peter Pan in disguise.
I did think that, too. I was like, who is this Zane character? And he is going to come back to be important because they're just giving him too much time, I guess. But no, I think he was just the friendly pirate.
Let's talk about love interest real quick. You're saying he's too old to be a love interest?
I know. Listen, canonically, friggin' Tangled, Rapunzel was 18 years old and Flynn was 26. I mean, Disney does it. I'm not saying they don't, but I was just like, this can't be, because I was also wondering, okay, because of all the Peter Pan adaptations that I've seen, I don't remember if I told you about Darling Girl, the book that I read, which, yikes, trigger warnings all the way. I was literally at the beach when I got to a portion of the book, and like I shut it and I looked at people who were around me. I was like, why don't we put trigger warnings in books? Because I'm so used to doing this thing with you where you type out these beautiful trigger warnings so I know what's happening. But then this book, and I'm like, why did no one tell me this was going to happen? My whole psyche is destroyed. Anyway, so all of the Peter Pan renditions that I've seen, Wendy's always in love with Peter, right? That's the thing, because he's that boyish charm and blah, blah, blah. I was waiting for them to figure out how to resolve that. So I didn't think they were going to introduce any other love interest until we'd figured that out, which in theory they did.
Which I kind of appreciate that Wendy's like, kind of young for me now.
Yeah, and she even there was a line where she was like, she remembered having occasional romantic notions about him, but like it was very brief.
Yeah, and it was when she was that age, so it makes sense.
Yes.
But she's to the point now where she's like, you're kind of childish. I'm kind of
Yeah, exactly. Oh, wait, I actually am growing up.
Which makes sense because she is 16.
Yeah, and you're like 12-ish.
Yeah, and so that's why I thought pirate, because he's older, he's more mature, but he's also looking for adventure.
I did love his monologue and his backstory. It's just a classic pirate backstory. We only want to be free, but then we become pirates and we realize we're still captive to this one person. And I happen to be captive to this crazy pirate man, and I don't know what to do. Maybe we can mutiny, maybe not. Is it really safe to mutiny against Hook? Probably not. I really liked his explanation of and justification of his character.
But I would have liked it better if he was a love interest.
Fair.
Because then we would have more reason to be concerned about Zane. Because let's be honest, beside the fact that we kind of like him, if Zane went into Hook's cabin and was like, hey, we should not, and got killed, kind of par for the course. But if he's a love interest, you're like, no, don't.
Yeah, that's fair.
No, don't hurt yourself. Don't do it, Zane. You have to live.
I think she was able to give us enough of a reason to like him without him being a love interest, which is difficult to do in young adult novels. He's just a friend. He's literally there to help her. There's no entanglement. I think that can be sometimes difficult to do, to introduce a male character and not like have them shipped together. But I still cared about him. I didn't want him to die. And I appreciated when she brought him back at the end. And so I feel like she did a good job of that, of giving him a good plot line without making him a love interest.
I don't know. I think she managed it with Slightly. He's 15.
Slightly was interesting too. That's true.
He is Wendy's age, and I at no point was like, oh yeah, I need to ship you two together.
Yeah, that's fair.
So this whole time she's trying to get to Neverland, Tinkerbell is trying to get to London.
Yeah.
Because the thing that changed in the story was, in the movie, Peter Pan goes to Wendy because she has his shadow.
Well, we think. We haven't watched it. Because I tried to look up the plot of the original Peter Pan, and all it said is the night that Wendy's moved out of the nursery, Peter Pan shows up. At least in just a very brief plot line. There's no implication that he's been there before. So I don't know.
Well, I don't know if he's been there specifically. I don't know how his shadow works, honestly. His shadow could have just wandered off.
That's fair.
So he gets reunited with his shadow in London.
Yes.
Facts. In this book, he thinks, oh, I should go to London and look for my shadow, but Tinkerbell convinces him not to.
Nah, fam.
Because she doesn't want him to go to Wendy.
Yeah.
Sometimes Tinkerbell can make jealousy look cute, and then other times it's just annoying.
It's just petulant. Yeah. But Tink knows, actually, crap, that's probably where it is. So let me go by myself and find it.
Yeah.
And bring it back to Peter. What was your plan after that? To hide it somewhere in Neverland and have him casually stumble across it?
I think her plan was just to walk up with it and be like, hey, I found it.
I found it. And just lie about where it was. It was under your pillow the whole time.
Not even bring it up. Because they've searched the entirety of the island, which the book starts off with it. And we know from the beginning that Peter Pan ain't great. You find out later, much later. So you have no viewpoint of it in the beginning, but essentially he blows Tinkerbell off to take a nap. It makes sense later because later Wendy loses her shadow and she says, oh my gosh, I'm so tired.
Yeah.
Without my shadow, I'm so exhausted. But in the beginning, we don't know that. And so to me, he was just kind of this lazy prick.
Yeah, a little bit.
Who was like, oh, sleeping's more important than listening to my friend.
Yeah. It also, the timeline, right? Like canonically, it's been 4 years in London time since they showed up. About, I think is when it's what it said, 4 years. But it hadn't been 4 years in Neverland Neverland time, right? He was still actively looking for his shadow, which I feel like you're not doing 4 whole years later. That was kind of weird, passage of time concept.
Yeah, I have no idea. And he doesn't come up till near the end of the book.
Yeah.
Worth mentioning. There's a prologue about him. Tinkerbell goes there and she realizes, oh my gosh, London's terrible for women. She gets a little bit of empathy for Wendy for having to live in London and deal with it. She goes to the house and Nana, the dog, somehow lets her in.
Yeah, it just was some sort of, you must have not knobs, but handles.
Something.
On the doors. But why would one of your external doors be a handle that a dog can open? Yikes.
Yeah, many questions.
Again, plot convenience.
She takes Tinkerbell to where the shadow was and keeps Tinkerbell from getting stuck in the drawer, which appreciate. Thank you, Nana.
Yeah, love Nana.
Poor Tink. I don't know how Nana knows this, but she tells Tinkerbell that Wendy left with the pirates.
I think Wendy told Nana.
Did she?
Yeah, there's a scene with Wendy and Nana as Wendy's leaving where Nana's sitting at the door being like, you really gonna do this, girl? And she's like, I have to go and find my adventure and blah, blah, blah. Like, I found Hook. And she's talking to Nana. Wendy kind of explains what she's doing.
Yeah.
And she's like, take care of the house for me because I'm not gonna be here.
So Zane helps her escape from the boat. She manages to get to shore. I do really appreciate the fantasy versus realism because all the time Wendy thinks about how she would tell the stories.
Yes.
And then going through them is completely different.
Yup. And I think that was one of the first times that the author did that, where she was like, and this is what I would have told them if I was narrating this to John and Michael. But actually, I was in a lot of pain and I fell asleep on the boat. And thank the Lord, I actually got to the shore.
She basically says, oh, I would mention how exhausted they would be and how they just barely made it to shore. But my gosh, barely making it to shore.
So that was pretty funny. I did like that. This is the first book, I will give it, that does any kind of fourth wall breaking, and it's actually well done and it's funny.
It's so good. I love the fourth wall breaking. I am a sucker for fourth wall breaking.
Yes.
But I liked it a lot. I think there was a fourth wall break about London's weather.
A little bit, yeah.
And we all know it's terrible, basically.
Yeah, it did it in a humorous way.
So she makes it to shore and she finds, apparently Michael and John made houses in Neverland mentally.
Yeah, that was kind of cute.
Which gets dropped. We never find John or Michael's house and she never comes back to her house. So, hey, she has a house.
Yeah, plot convenience.
Oh, and by the way, she also has a wolf pup that isn't important.
Yeah, that we have to take out of every scene because it would have been too useful.
I know. Oh, it made me so mad because immediately they get rid of her. Immediately. Why did you introduce us? I can't remember. Is a wolf in the original Peter Pan story?
No, not at all. It's totally new.
Why did you give her a wolf?
Which I kind of liked the symbology of the difference between Snowball was a forced gift on her from parents who obviously didn't know her. Because if they did, they would have known, oh no, she likes dogs that are the size of Nana. And when she has pictured herself with a dog, she has pictured a literal wolf, right? And so this is what she has created for herself as the perfect companion, which I think is cute. And it's Luna. I don't know. I would love to see this wolf in an anime. I'm excited to see it, like you said, in the graphic novel because I think it'll be really cute.
She separates from Luna almost immediately.
Fair.
More proof of Michael being a brat because apparently when you think of something, Neverland creates it. Well, he created a little monster basically that hates adults and adult stuff. And Wendy seriously thinks, crap, my brother's contributions might give me issues.
Yeah, right. But again, and then that is the subtle world building that is not what she does later, which is where she takes you to a place and someone slaps you in the face of lore content. This is her realizing through a real event in her encounter of, oh, wait, I thought Neverland was something I made up, but apparently other people have influence on it.
Yeah.
And that is laying the groundwork for the future explanation of the lore.
Yeah, because it starts out and she thinks, oh, crap, my brothers are involved. And later out, she finds out, oh, crap, every child in the world is involved.
Yeah.
That place must be nuts.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's at this point that Tinkerbell literally runs into her. Wendy decides that she's going to go try to see the mermaids, and Tinkerbell rams into her. Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, we're going to just go back to the ship real quick for like 2 seconds, and then we're going to go back to Wendy. There were shifting perspectives in the book, and I don't know. Sometimes I liked them, and sometimes I didn't. didn't like them. I guess it depends on the content that was in the particular chapter.
Yeah, and they were pretty random. And like you said, like some of them were helpful. I mean, they were usually flash sideways as to Hook and that crew, which is helpful information to have.
I enjoyed when he went to the lady to learn black magic.
Yes, that one was good.
But then there were others where I was like, eh.
Yeah, I noticed that some of them weren't even whole chapters by themselves. They were just what I imagine looked like in the book was just like a page break and then maybe 2 pages of additional dialogue of what was going on with Hook. That's weird.
It got its own chapter, but it was 2 pages.
Yeah.
Okay. Reminder that Captain Hook exists, I guess. Because that's kind of how I feel when Zane went in and Zane was like, hey, we could not. And Hook is like, but we can.
But we can. We have to.
And that was kind of it.
Yeah.
So I'm probably going to ignore all of Hook's stuff, except for when we get to the lady with the dark magic. But Tinkerbell must be an icon at charades. All I'm saying. Because she's able to communicate with Wendy through gestures and whatnot. So this is the point where Wendy's like, hey, I traded his shadow to Hook. Woo! And Tinkerbell goes nuts and is upset.
Yeah, flies off the handle.
This is the only part that Luna was good for, is Luna helped Tinkerbell stop beating the crap out of her.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give this one to Tinkerbell, though. Wendy is trying to explain, oh, we should totally not go to Peter first. We should go look in these other areas and gather support. And she complains that Tinkerbell, quote, wouldn't listen to logic or reason, end quote. Yeah, of course she's not. You don't have either of them.
Yeah.
You don't have logic or reason. She's right. Go to Peter first.
Yeah. And I don't necessarily know if they do a good job of explaining it in this perspective. Wendy is very much, she owns that she doesn't want to go to Peter first because she doesn't want to deal with the consequences of telling him what she did to his shadow.
She doesn't want to let down her idol.
Yeah. So that's why she's just being very avoidant of it. But Tink's just like, absolutely not. And she tries to gaslight her a little bit. She's like, well, Tink, you're being unreasonable. And I'm like, ma'am, no.
No, she's not.
Not at all.
You're the one being unreasonable. So they compromise and they're going to go see the Lost Boys first.
Which somewhat makes sense. It's a good place to start.
It's a good compromise. I'll give it that. So at this point, Tinkerbell gives her pixie dust and teaches her how to fly, which seems much more involved than it did in the movie.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely not simple.
No. And so at this point, Luna refuses pixie dust and insists that she's going to run slowly over land. And so that was when I said, haha, because she would be too useful otherwise.
Yes, exactly.
So they make it to the Lost Boys hideout. The Lost Boys are the Lost Boys, and she's about to play mom again when she realizes, hey, that's exactly what I just said I didn't want to do.
Yeah, so good insight there.
The whole reason I came here was to avoid watching a bunch of kids in Ireland. So I ended up watching a bunch of adults on a pirate ship. I'm not about to watch a bunch of kids in a tree.
Yeah, exactly. So good insight into realizing, oh, this is my pattern. This is what I know to do best, but I did say I wasn't going to do this, so I shouldn't do this here either.
I don't like them on a plane or a train. I don't like them here or there. I don't like ringnecks anywhere. But Tink calls her out immediately. I loved that.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Which they don't get mad at Wendy, but they do figure out that Tink was keeping Peter from London and get mad at her. They both deserve.
Yeah.
I appreciate that they're both at fault for this.
Yes, this is a really good example of how you want to avoid doing this thing because you think the consequences are going to be worse than they actually are. The Lost Boys understood. They're like, you did what you had to do to get here. You weren't going to be able to come any other way because you're too old. They are immediately able to make sense of it and then also put together Tink's responsibility in it and then hold her accountable too. And I'm like, look at these kids. They're doing a good job.
They're doing a great job. Better than Peter, canonically.
Yup, as they say. They're like, yeah, Peter's a little bit unhinged. And this is where I started wondering, is Peter Pan secretly going to be a villain?
I mean, he kind of is in the original tale.
Yes. The only example of this that I can actually think of right now is Twilight, right? When they create this vampire child, everyone's like, this is so bad because you can't trap an eternal being in a tiny person's body because you have instincts and urges and blah, blah, blah. There's no way to control them. And so I'm like, Peter Pan can 100% be a villain because he is this infinitely timeless harmless creature, but trapped in a young boy's body, his temper tantrums can be explosive and incredibly detrimental. So when the leader,
Slightly.
when he started to be like, I don't really want to be around Peter when you tell him this because he's going to get mad. I started to be like, oh, these poor boys are kind of in an abusive relationship with their leader.
They are 100%. That is fact. Because Peter, oh my gosh, Peter. Yeah, he doesn't have a shadow, but
yeah,
it's things like, oh, Slightly is getting older and is having ideas for himself. And so Peter wants to kick him out of Neverland.
Yeah, bad. Bye. No.
Which is more PG because I thought she was going to go the Twisted Tales route of the original story where he kills them off when they get too old.
Oof.
But she didn't go there, which I have questions. That seems exactly where Liz would go, but who knows?
Yeah, because again, she balanced everything pretty well this time. So maybe they were like, you got to pick and choose. Can't go that dark.
It's true. Even in her darkest moments, only the villains are allowed to be dark. So maybe that was a Disney thing of, no, he's a hero.
Yeah.
You can't make him a villain. I could see that being a Disney thing in the contract.
Yeah. Or at the very least, he needs to be morally neutral because, again, temper tantruming 12-year-old boy.
But that's where I thought it was going with Slightly. You also figure out one of the Lost Boys is a girl. Good for her. The rest of the Lost Boys know.
I thought that was interesting.
And they don't care.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, so what?
But canonically, Peter would have a fit. Because her whole thing is she pretended to be a boy so that he would pick her.
Yeah, because it's not normal.
To go to Neverland because she was in an orphanage and she wanted to go to Neverland, so she pretended to be a boy.
Yep.
And it worked.
Yeah, I did like that. I also 100% thinking this. I had you in the back of my head and the Bechdel test. The exact conversation, because I was like, they're sitting here and they're complaining about Peter, and you're finally picking up on the fact that Pink likes Peter. She's in love with him, basically. And I'm just like, why is everything about this petulant child? Because I've labeled Peter as a petulant child from moment one. That's all he is. And so when they introduced that conversation, and then Wendy's like, actually, we should just stop talking about him because it's not doing anyone any good. I'm like, yes, thank you. Please drop it.
No, that part made me laugh because, okay, so they talking to the boys and whatever. Boys agree to help to no one's surprise, but they need to tell Peter about the shadow because they don't want to be part of the fallout. Fair. So Wendy and Tink are going to go to the mermaids to see if they've seen Peter lately. And as they're leaving, Wendy and Tink, clearly Peter's a sore spot between them. So Wendy says, hey, like you said, we're just not going to talk about Peter. We're going to talk about other things. And I literally put in my notes, gotta pass the Bechdel test after all.
Yep. But I love how they retroactively did it. Wendy acknowledged, actually, you know what? Putting a man in this conversation is actually not doing anything to help our friendship. So we're just going to take him out and then we'll see how it goes. And it worked.
It works so well.
Yeah.
Mainly because Wendy falls in love with a fairy, but that's beside the point. She's not a threat anymore.
Nah, I think they were starting to develop their friendship before the fairy came in.
Oh, yeah. But it really did immediately make me think of the Bechdel test.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Listening to that whole conversation between the two of them, I was like, ah, yes, Sam is going to like this.
It was just so funny way to handle it, to just straight up be like, we need to not talk about him. That's what all of our conversations have been about.
Yeah, and obviously you've got a thing going for him, so I'm just going to back off because I'm good. You good? No? Okay, let's figure this out.
So they go to the mermaids, and apparently Wendy had a bunch of dreams about joining the mermaids and then brushing her hair and blah, 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 blah. And this was the part where, first of all, Wendy kind of is like, why is everyone jealous of literally everyone here? Because everyone's obsessed with Peter Pan. If we took him out of the equation, things would be so much better.
Yeah.
But this was the part where I started to wonder if Liz was pulling a feminist Peter Pan and all the girls were going to get together and fix things. Yes and no.
Yes and no. Yeah, decent prediction.
Because the mermaids don't help her.
Absolutely not.
Which, they try to drown her, and Wendy doesn't know how to swim because she's a girl in London. Makes sense. And so Tinkerbell just starts throwing fruit into the ocean.
Yeah, I was like, what the actual heck? And then Wendy's like, oh, but wait, actually there are some mythos that they will trade anything and everything for fruit because fruit doesn't grow in the ocean.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, cool. Is that real? I don't know. Feels just like a convenient plot thing, but...
I mean, I believe it at this point. She has used it for 2 different books. I believe she did some sort of research, and that's the thing.
Oh, that's true. I forgot about the Little Mermaid.
But this point also makes me go back to Little Mermaid and be like, you did it wrong. Because in this book, they're fighting over fruit that just got thrown into the sea, and so might be a little salty, but it's still going to taste like fruit. Ariel took an entire bag of apples underwater, traveled all the way to Atlantica, and then gave it to her sisters. They are going to taste like trash.
That's true.
Still bitter.
So what I wanted to point out here with the mermaid scene is that I didn't really connect it until you started talking about it, but this is Wendy's moment to be able to empathize with Tinkerbell. When Tinkerbell comes to London and she's like, oh, well, maybe this is why Wendy doesn't like being a girl, because this does kind of suck. This is the moment where Wendy's like, oh my gosh, like all these mermaids are gorgeous. And the words, I remember them saying that Peter comes to hang out here when he's down. And Tinkerbell is his constant companion.
Everyone's coming for her man.
And instead of hanging out with friends or whatever, he just goes to look at hot chicks when he's sad.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, of course Tinkerbell's jealous of them. This was just a good parallel. They each needed that moment to be able to empathize for the other person. And then after this is, I feel like, where their friendship really starts to blossom.
Yeah, because essentially Tinkerbell thought she would be like another mermaid.
Yeah.
Because that's what she's having to deal with.
That's what she's used to.
But, okay, it's canonical. They're sirens. They lure men to their deaths with their voices and then drown them. But Wendy is too hard to drown.
Yeah.
She's too heavy. They drown grown men.
Yeah. Also in clothes.
Kicking, screaming, trying to get away. But this small 16-year-old girl who the most exercise she gets is maybe a walk around the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Girl.
Again, there are definitely moments where she's improving, but then you have that plot convenience nonsense.
That was ridiculous.
You didn't even need to say that that's why the drowning wasn't successful. Just the fact that Tinkerbell distracted them with the fruit is enough justification for why they did not successfully drown her.
Yeah.
Come on. Why'd you throw that in there?
Well, the mermaids finally reveal that Peter left 4 days ago. 4 days ago!
Yeah.
To petition the first.
And here where we're like, what the heck is the first?
This is where I got a little off the wall.
Yes.
But thankfully, we have a moment to talk about Captain Hook. I feel like I'm over here like, but thankfully, we can talk about our sponsor. That's how often he comes up, just randomly. And oh yeah, here you go. Here's an ad for Captain Hook. He visits this random lady to get black magic so he can turn the shadow into a compass so he can find Peter Pan.
Yes.
And I kind of love the we're both bad guys friendship.
Yeah.
Where she'll do something evil and then he'll kind of do something in return. And she's like, oh, it's so good to see you, Hooky.
Yeah, right. But I can't remember if it was Smee or Zane. Someone whispered, she's not going to ask us to get a baby, right? And he's like, there are some lines even I won't cross.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, dang, like this girl bad.
Oh, yeah.
She's a lot.
So in exchange for rum, sugar, and a nice gown that I guess they have, she gives him a bunch of books.
Yep, black magic.
Anyway, that's the only Hook one I care about. The rest is just foreshadowing.
Yeah, and mainly it's just because the witch character, I just imagine her as a mixture between Calypso from Pirates and then a little bit like Mad Madam Mim from Sword in the Stone.
Yeah.
Because they even comment, they're like, what kind of witch lives on an island? Shouldn't she be in the forest? And he's like, she can do what she wants, man. It works for her.
At this point, Wendy and Tink are going through a dark jungle to try to get to wherever the heck they think the first is. And once again, they have to have a heart-to-heart where Wendy's like, hey, I don't want to come in between you and Peter. He's a little young for me. So this is the part where Tinkerbell's like, okay, you have earned my trust enough for me to want to actually communicate with you. But I don't like how she does it.
It is a little icky.
So essentially what she does is force Wendy to open her mouth, and she throws pixie dust into her mouth. And so now Wendy can understand fairy speak. Wouldn't it make sense for her to put it in her ears? Why her mouth?
Yeah.
She's not trying to speak fairy. She's trying to understand it.
That's true, because canonically, Tink can understand what Wendy's saying, just not vice versa.
Yeah. I have a lot of issues with the fairy communication, but we'll get back to that. The juxtaposition. This is obviously not back to back, but she learns how to understand fairy just in time for Tinkerbell to be like, hey, I have no idea where we're going.
I don't know where the first is.
Because apparently the first move around like it's Howl's Moving Castle.
A little bit.
So she decides she's going to summon other fairies to see if the other fairies have knowledge of where it's been recently. Couldn't you just fly really high and find it?
I mean, Neverland's pretty big.
I don't know. I just think about the scene of when they're flying from London to Neverland. Anyway, they decide to summon fairies. And this is when you find out, oh no, Tinkerbell's an outcast in fairy society, just like Wendy's an outcast in London society.
And there's your parallel.
It's mirrored storylines. Anyway, Tinkerbell gets grabbed by a monster.
Yeah.
Wendy does her best to fight, but it sneaks off. And so Wendy releases her shadow to try to find it, which I have questions. Apparently a shadow can't leave you unless you let it leave you. Does Peter have a habit of letting his shadow leave him?
Yeah, or somehow it's just ripped off of you.
Yeah, questions. Anyway, the shadow blinds the creature. It thrushes about so Wendy can save Tinkerbell. And then the shadow flies off and it goes, woo.
Bye.
There we go.
I'm free because your shadow became sentient.
Wendy gets mad at it later because it goes to find Peter Pan by herself and she finds him. And that's where Wendy later on finds her shadow. And she's like, you stupid thing. You could have told me.
And you could have come and found me and then guided me to him. You knew that's what we were doing.
That would be too plot convenient.
Yes.
Because once again, Wendy has a shadow buddy. But heaven forbid it be super useful after that one point. So that's a dropped subplot.
Yeah, and it barely comes back later.
Oh no, the shadow worries about Peter's shadow.
Yeah, okay. But don't they say, oh, you can't return to the real world without your shadow or something like that?
Yeah.
Because Tink's like, that's the moment when Tinkerbell's like, wow, you gave up way more than you even realized for me. And so I see that you're a genuine and helpful person.
Yeah, and it's an interesting threat. But I don't know. The shadow made it on the cover and it's barely in the book.
Yeah.
So Tinkerbell teaches her how to sleep on the wind, which I have questions. You have to actively think happy thoughts to fly, but you're going to let me believe that she can float unconscious?
Yeah.
Okay. Don't have a nightmare. You'll plummet to the earth.
That's true.
Questions. Anyway, so they go into the mist of the first, which, by the way, this entire book, I was low-key worried about how they were gonna handle Tiger Lily.
Yep.
And her people.
And they don't really do it at all.
And so she just ignores them.
Yep.
Which, good. Don't put yourself into that.
Yeah, that's more than this book can handle.
So they go into this mist of the first, and apparently they experience what would be the worst situation for them.
I didn't think about it like that.
Wendy experiences a desert.
Yeah.
Which is apparently her worst case scenario, while Tinkerbell is experiencing a swamp.
Yeah.
Filled with mud everywhere. It's just getting everywhere and it's gross, which I can't blame her. She's a fairy.
Yeah, any amount of mud would weigh her down.
Yeah, I don't know how wings work in Neverland, but they are very sensitive.
That's fair. But I thought the idea of they're seeing different things is interesting, but I didn't think about it from that perspective. Like it's one of the worst environments for them.
Yes.
She's the gentle Londoner. London doesn't get that hot. London doesn't have dry heat.
London has plenty of water.
Yeah.
Even if it's polluted. I count the first as an interesting drop subplot, but it's more so to give exposition.
Exactly.
So they're in this area and they meet these statues and they look like something appropriate to the environment that they are both imagining. But they essentially explain how the worlds are connected lore, because the first was there before anyone's imagination took over Neverland. And now Neverland is constantly changing.
Yeah.
Because of the people. And so they essentially task Wendy with saving the world, essentially, because she's so busy out here trying to save Neverland, and they call her out and she's like, well, your world has so much corruption and terribleness, so you need to solve that. She says, but I'm a 16-year-old girl. And they're like, sucks to suck, and disappear.
Yeah, so what? But I mean, I did like the connection where they're like, what do you think's going to happen to this world if your people keep trying to control it?
Yeah, because they call her out for creating Captain Hook in the first place.
They call her out so hard.
And now he's trying to destroy literally everything. And so, great example. But they really are. They task her with solving her planet's issues.
Yep.
Her plane of existence issues. And then just leave?
Yes, that's fair. They do call her out because one of their last phrases is like, but what have you done to help yourself? What have you done to make your life better? And I think that's where it clicks for Wendy that, oh yeah, I have been pretty passive and a little helpless. I should start being more main character character energy.
Yeah, I do like it, but yeah, then it's immediately dropped, and it's like, okay, well, they're with that.
Yeah, we're just here to introduce plot and give you world building lore.
Always. So she has to figure out how to get out of the situation because they're stuck.
Yeah, they get trapped.
And okay, she cannot fly canonically in the first mist because fairy dust doesn't work, but she can still understand Tinkerbell.
Yeah.
Pick a lane.
I did not think about it until I saw your note, but you're right. That is very much a plot hole right there. Again, we've got convenience.
Either make pixie dust not work completely, and then she loses her ability to communicate with Tinkerbell, or let her keep flying because you can't leave the mist by flying anyway.
Exactly.
Anyway, she decides the only way to save themselves is by imagining using her stories, which wasn't that a problem in the first place? They just chastise you for creating stories and messing with Neverland, but the way out is to create stories? I don't know. She creates a love story about a river, and so a river appears, which I'm kind of curious how Tinkerbell interpreted all of that happening, but you know, whatever.
Oh yeah, in her swamp perspective?
In her swamp! Does a river also just cut through her swamp? I don't know. Questions. But they managed to get themselves outside where they found a massive rainstorm, which is just great. So she somehow manages to get the boat onto the riverbank and finds shelter.
Yeah.
Where she finally realizes, oh, my bag's missing, my wolf's missing. Well, not missing, but with the lost boys. But she's lost basically everything she has, and her dress keeps getting destroyed, which I do kind of like symbolically.
Yeah, for sure. And like she keeps getting more dirty.
Her dress keeps coming undone. She's lost so much stuff, like her propriety, basically.
Yeah.
And whatnot to get the work done because screw pomp and circumstance. We'll see how that shapes her personality later. And there's a cute moment when Winnie's like, oh, you should visit me in London, Tinkerbell. And Tinkerbell gets immediately jealous because she's like, Peter. And Wendy's like, no, we promise not to talk about him.
Yeah.
We don't talk about Bruno.
Also, I like your friend.
There was a guy fairy that showed up and she totally has a crush on him.
Yep.
I have questions.
Fair.
I have so many questions. I don't accept Tinkerbell with Peter Pan, and so that's probably one of the reasons I'm like, I don't accept this either.
Yeah, that's fair.
Oh, Hook reference to going to Skull Island. That's it.
Yep. Guess what? Captain Hook went to Skull Island for something.
Yeah, and so Wendy gets attacked by Thistlets?
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty close. Thistlets.
Which I want to see the graphic novel for this scene specifically. They're these little creatures that can show images on their butts. They're fuzzy little butts.
Yeah, they're little bees.
And they try to capture you, essentially, with that, and then try to eat you. It's a whole thing. Oh yeah, and this is when she references the Native Americans on the island.
Yep.
Acknowledgement, no further. Fair enough.
Yep.
I don't blame her. But this is when Wendy finds out that Captain Hook has the shadow in a weird cage. But then she also starts seeing scenes of London. Oh, the scenes of London. We'll talk about it when it comes up. But basically, everyone's so sad without her. We'll talk about it in more detail later. But the reasons I hate the family. Moving on. So Wendy ends up getting kidnapped by these creatures.
Yeah, again, just these weird creatures in Neverland, you know?
I am so curious. I have questions. So you could tell I was in the theory class because me sneaking in. Oh, Marxist theory about how the media creates placid proletarians.
Yeah, I was wondering what that was.
I can't be stopped. There's a theory in Marxism that the media is created just to keep the world order as is and to keep the proletariats, who are the lower class, placid so they don't rise up and take over the upper class. Super simplified, but that's what that is.
Fair. Yeah, I can see it.
So I don't know if Liz was trying that, but Liz, here's some Marxist theory for your book. Congratulations.
There you go.
So they have to fight to the death with these things, and I'm so curious. But let's go to London. Let's
Let's tackle London.
Shall we?
Oh boy.
Which, by the way, the best line in this entire book. The author asked a bunch of questions, and then at the end of the paragraph says, "We shall indulge the reader with the answer to exactly 2 of these questions, even as we indulge the author in a bit of fourth wall breakage."
Beautiful. Here is where I was like, yep, we're doing it, and it's great.
Liz, I have never wanted to hang out more than with this sentence.
Yep. I don't know what I thought was happening listening to it, because I was like, wait, what did I just hear? Is this actually written in the book, or is it a little editor's note or something like that? What is happening?
No, it was written in the book. And just like any other sentence, no parentheses or anything. It was just beautiful. But anyway, so London. The boys realize that Wendy isn't home when they get home from school, which I have questions about because Wendy is the one who gets them up in the morning to go to school.
Yeah, and she left in the middle of the night.
But they don't realize until she gets home, I guess, whatever. I guess Miss Darling was actually doing her job that one morning.
Yeah, I don't know.
So there is a moment where Michael's like, hey, we never do anything nice to her. But Michael doesn't do anything nice for anyone. So that was a normal statement. My hatred of Michael. What is he? Canonically, let's see. Oh, it doesn't say.
No, I mean, he's probably like 10.
I was thinking 10, yeah.
10, maybe 12, but yeah.
And at this point, they realize that the shadow is missing, but they also pull a, well, was the shadow ever here?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but the parents come home and act like they mildly care that Wendy is possibly kidnapped.
She's gone.
But they don't want to go to the police.
No, because we can't have
the neighbors talking.
Exactly, yeah.
Heaven forbid our child be safe. And then they let it slip that they were going to send him to Ireland, which, like you said, John calls them out for sending Wendy to a place with more fairy tale stories.
Yeah.
And more children to tell them to.
Yeah, that's part of the issue. John and Michael don't want to listen to the stories anymore because they're too, quote unquote, old for it. You're going to send them to with a bunch of young.
And that's why she's been writing them down, but eventually she's going to run out of audience. Theoretically, this would snuff itself out. Even if it didn't, okay, who cares? It's not taking away from her household duties. She's still running this entire household.
Yeah.
Heaven forbid she have a hobby.
Yeah.
Sigh. Anyway, back to Neverland and the parents not giving a crap about their child.
Yeah. Because a little bit of, is Wendy making more of a big deal than it all really is? So what her parents won't let her tell her stories and that kind of stuff. And then you get these flash sideways when you're not there. And she's like, oh no, all of her feelings are completely valid and justified.
Yeah, they're terrible people.
Terrible.
Let's do them dirty. Just like Jen Palanita did the Duke of Wesselton dirty. They're the real villains this entire time.
I mean, that is a little bit of the underlying story of, oh, the real world sucks. People literally do live in orphanages. People are homeless. People get assaulted and all this kind of stuff.
Children get parentified so their parents can go on social calls.
Yeah.
It's, ugh. So, back to Neverland, though. There's a weird moment where she decides to let the boat go. She's used it twice in a row at this point, but she decides to let the boat go because nothing stays around, and if she needs it, it will come back. Okay.
I mean, that logic isn't strictly wrong based on what's happened up to this point because the boat showed up when she needed it.
Except she just used it twice in a row.
Yes, but she was able to manifest it.
Yeah, I don't know. It was a little weird, but it kind of felt like Luna, where it's like, oh, if we had a boat, this would be easier.
Yeah, fair.
So, bye. You've served your purpose. Couldn't have just washed away in the storm. That would have made more sense, but no, she lets it go into the ocean.
Yeah, because they hid in a tree. You definitely didn't say you anchored your boat anywhere.
Yeah. She pulled it onto the shelf or the ledge.
Okay.
But you totally could have said that the river flooded and it just went, there you go.
There it be.
I don't know. I guess that was a moment for her, but it just seemed a little weird to me. But hey, Wendy Shadow's back, and I'm sure you saw in my notes. Wendy finds Peter Pan and immediately gets caught up in his completely manic energy. Peter Pan has something.
Yes, he does.
I'm convinced.
I think what they're trying to do, which they did with the original Peter Pan, he is just this bubbling, youthful child, and you can't not help but get wrapped up in his energy. And so I think that that's what they were trying to do, because she starts off very logical and then immediately he's like, no, like everything's good and this is what we're going to do and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, okay, cool. But then she backs up to be like, well, wait a second. No, you need to calm down. We need to think this through. We need to make a plan, blah, blah, blah. But I think there is a little bit of magic in Peter Pan. Like that's the whole point, that he does have this incredibly infectious energy. That's why people want to be around him. That's why people are happy around him. But because of her age, she's able to back it up at some point. And like you said, she realizes that she's growing up and it's like, well, actually, I don't need this energy in my life.
Yeah, because she realizes she likes Peter Pan because he's basically the permission to have an adventure.
Exactly.
If you're doing it with Peter Pan, then it's okay. But if she did it by herself, that would be weird. So it literally is just permission to have adventures. So she decides, what if I just gave myself permission?
Yeah, I mean, he's very metaphorical in that sense. He is everything that exhibits childhood innocence and children's ability to kind of do what they want, because they're supposed to be able to do that. Like, it's not their job to protect themselves when they're that young. That's the parents' job.
Yeah, childhood innocence, quote unquote. He also embodies all that is wrong with children.
Yes, 100%. Unmeasured children. Like, there's a reason we don't just let children go and live on their own on an island. What's the book about that? Lord of the Flies. Like, there's a reason we don't do that, because kids can't. They do not have the capability to think that stuff through. So, like, parents are there, so we need to work on making sure we mitigate their destructive tendencies. But also, childhood innocence is a thing that should be preserved.
Yeah. So Peter gets mad at Tink.
Everyone's mad at Tink. Poor Tink.
Everyone's mad at Tink. No one cares that Wendy did. But he gets mad at Tink for lying to him out of jealousy. But he forgives her immediately.
Well, with direction from Wendy, right? Because he gets mad and he's like, you're banished. And Wendy's like, absolutely not. That's dumb. She was trying to help. She was just trying to protect you and she loves you. And he's like, you're right. She's fine. She can stay.
Which is very dealing with children.
Yes, very easily influenced.
Playing with each other. Maybe it's because I'm a mom now, but he just seems exhausting.
Yes, he does.
But Wendy tells him about Hook's plan. So not only does Wendy not get in trouble, but he's happy that she did it because now he has an excuse to fight Captain Hook.
Yeah.
Which I wasn't aware he needed a reason.
Fair. That's a good point.
Once again, canonically, he chops off his hand and feeds it to an alligator, but no one's looking at Peter, weirdly.
Yep.
That's a little psychotic, Peter.
But also, Wendy's the one who came up with the story, so...
That's a little psychotic, Wendy. Granted, once again, we have learned that she is realizing that her words have power, and actually going through those experiences is very different than just talking about them.
That's fair. So that's forcing her to take perspective.
But even she doesn't think about the hand thing. I think about the hand thing often.
Yeah, that's the whole point. He's Captain Hook. He's got a hook for a hand, but we don't actually think about, wait, that means that a 12-year-old lopped off his hand and fed it to an alligator. That's dark.
And is still teasing him like a child would tease somebody.
Yeah.
I don't blame him for being obsessed.
Yep. Which is low-key, I love one, like I've talked about Once Upon a Time a couple, maybe every episode, who knows, I don't know. But I love the Once Upon a Time version of the Captain Hook and Peter Pan story, because Peter Pan is absolutely a maniac and is a little bit psychotic and is everything, like we said, that is wrong with the idea of an infinitely ageless child being and what repercussions that could have on the world. And then, of course, who doesn't love Captain Hook in Once Upon a Time? Because you understand his need for revenge. Sure, he's a little obsessive about it, but he's like, you wrecked me and you're a little bit crazy and I need to protect the world from you.
Yeah, it's something else. And I'm very surprised Liz didn't go more into that darkness.
I agree.
But once again, I think Disney would have had an issue if she made the hero a bad guy.
Fair.
So she kind of pokes around it sometimes, being like, hey, maybe he's not as morally correct. Which the movie kind of pokes at because he is more of a Puck character.
Yeah.
But not too far to push him into maybe we should be concerned about you territory. Except for me. I'm very concerned. But I was concerned to begin with.
Again, YA.
Or Liz. Or Disney. frankly. But yeah, she realizes that she's growing up and she doesn't mind the thought of growing up, which is definitely a development stage because I feel like kids are, oh, I don't want to grow up. I don't want to grow up. I want to be kids. Well, maybe being an adult isn't so bad.
Yeah. When you're a kid, you don't realize how kid-like all of your logic and your reasoning and your behavior is. And then you grow up and you watch a 12-year-old have a temper tantrum and you're like, was I like that? And yes, because that's how kids are supposed to be. But having control over your brain is nice. Not being completely ruled by your emotions. Now, granted, we are still like that as adults sometimes.
Not the hormones. I would not want to deal with it for anything.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine being stuck as a 12-year-old boy, like a prepubescent 12-year-old boy forever? That would suck.
Being stuck as a prepubescent 12-year-old, although by 12, you're probably pubescent.
That's fair. Also, did you notice that nod when they were explaining the girl's Lost Boy story? When Wendy's like, I wonder if she's old enough to be reminded that she's a girl each month. And I'm like, I see you, Liz. I know exactly what you're trying to hint at.
Oh yeah, for sure. So many questions.
Many.
So Wendy decides a new plan. And the first part of this is she tells Peter to stay put.
Yeah.
Hun, that is not gonna happen.
But it does.
Okay. So she goes to get the Lost Boys and then gets Tinkerbell to get help from the fairies, even though Peter doesn't want that. You get such a good look on how codependent Tinkerbell and Peter are.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Well, it makes me wonder how much Peter Pan knows of Tink and like of her history, because we now as the audience canonically know she is an outcast. The fairies don't respect her. The fairies likely aren't going to answer her call, but Wendy's like, yeah, but you should do it anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Her boy shows back up. That's really all that comes out of that.
Literally all. Oh, by the way, I completely forgot about this. When Wendy is in the fog and conjures the river, she also conjures a clockwork alligator?
Yep, TikTok. That's what the alligator's called.
That's a subplot that gets dropped.
Yep.
Or at least not used to its best effect.
Nope. And it's very friendly. It doesn't do literally anything.
No! At least in the movie when we're being super gallows humor about it, we're having some kind of fun with it. The Shadow is just being tortured. She just lists a bunch of ways they've been torturing him. And it's just, Liz. Oh my goodness. Anyway. I wonder if she's ever been to the Museum of Torture.
Who knows?
I feel like it would be up her alley. So they're going to use Peter Pan as bait to get Hook to focus on him. And so she tells the Lost Boys this. They agree to help, but it's going to take 4 hours before they can get there on foot. It's a shame they don't have a magical fairy that can make them fly.
Yeah, but she's not with her, so it's going to take 4 hours.
Because she's helping with the other fairies. Anyway, whatever. So she goes back to the beach. Tink returns the favor of kind of chilling her out, because this time around, Wendy yells at her shadow for not being helpful enough, and Tinkerbell's like, girl, you good? I don't think you're good. You should calm down.
Yeah.
You need to calm down. Anyway, so instead, Wendy makes a deal with her shadow. Okay. I feel like the shadow could have been used to such greater effect than all this, but okay.
Totally.
So the pirates end up showing up before the boys do. So Wendy has to drag Peter into the jungle to wait, because he's ready. He's so ready. He's going to go.
Let me at him. Let me at him. Sorry, sir. This man has literally been torturing you. You should not be fighting when you could just end up doubled over in pain.
Yeah. And Thorn shows up and he doesn't want to help because he thinks it's a Peter Pan thing. And I know, oh no, Tinkerbell's an outcast, poor thing. But it just made me think of the family members that are done with you being terrible because you're codependent on a nut job.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. But he does say he was like, well, I heard your dance, but only fairies with no honor wouldn't show up. So he's acknowledging, he's a little bit calling out the rest of his people while also being like, but I am going to do my duty.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Maybe they see something we don't see.
Yeah, that's fair.
Anyway, so Wendy explains, oh no, he's going to destroy the world with black magic. And so he agrees to help. The Lost Boys show up with Luna. I expected something to happen with that, but it didn't. They're just like, oh, we took a shortcut.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about what happened, though.
Just know that it was epic and we won.
Yeah, it was epic and we won. I was like, why did we have to sit with Wendy on the beach?
Hearing about them sunburning.
When we could have had the viewpoint from Slightly or from
the Cub.
Anyone else, honestly. But
yeah,
Slightly and Peter make up because Peter was going to throw Slightly out and now he's not, maybe? I don't know. At least for the time being. As soon as this adventure is is over. I'm expecting Peter to go back to wanting to throw him out. Oh well. Speaking of codependent relationships, what does it say when all your relationships become codependency?
It's the environment. You're in a codependent environment.
Very. The pirates see them and are trying to get to shore. Wendy wants to make a plan. At this point, you were just sitting around. Why do you need a... Anyway, Peter is like, nah.
Yeah, I love the chapter titles. And when we got into this thing where it's just like, a new plan, next chapter, a new plan, but really, it'll actually work this time. That was literally 2 chapters in a row was making a joke about how we made a plan, didn't work. Here's the new plan, but it will work this time.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So all the pirates are coming, but Wendy realizes, oh my gosh, Hook stayed on the ship for a reason. So Wendy tries to help fight the pirates and sort of manages it, but Zane ends up grabbing her and tying her up to keep her out of the fight. It would have been better if he was a love interest. Would have been more dramatic. Would have had more feeling behind it, but alas.
Yes.
Wendy flies to the ship and Tink unties her.
Yes.
So Zane kind of won because she stopped fighting? I don't know.
Yeah.
So this is the part where, remember when we mentioned that guy getting shot? Well, apparently, not only has Hook been practicing torture magic and twisting the planes of space-time to manipulate a shadow, he's also been practicing necromancy.
But also, here's some necromancy for you.
Wow. And I thought that was really well done. I wasn't seeing that coming, but also, once he was there, nah.
Yeah, it was a little bit of I thought it was going to be kind of a Game of Thrones-esque with the mountain, but he just kind of sat there and didn't do anything. And I'm like, well, okay.
Yeah, so dropped plotline.
Yeah, several of those. What's our count now?
I don't even know. Too many is the answer to that. So Hook has a torture device with the knob that he can turn, and so he turns it all the way up so Peter's knocked out.
Yeah, and I think Hook thought it killed him.
Maybe, but the whole point was to make Peter watch the destruction.
Oh, that's true.
And when you do that, he can't watch anymore. If he thought he killed him, he kind of just mercifully killed him very quickly and before everything went down. I don't know. It literally felt like, oh no, Peter Pan would be too useful. How do we make him not? And so she just incapacitated him. And then there was a funny part where Hook is trying to yell to the Lost Boys to surrender because he has Peter, but he's really far away from shore, so he can't communicate it. But eventually he gets his point across, and the pirates round up the Lost Boys, and Wendy grabs Tink, who's not about to leave Peter Pan herself.
Yeah.
And decides to regroup with Thorn. And I think this is around the point where it was like, oh no, the real plan. So Wendy decides to use her stories to defeat Hook. Which, I mean, I guess that's where this book had been going the entire time. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so she just left the ship. So she goes to shore and pretends like she's trying to tell Hook a story until he gets frustrated enough to have 2 of his men capture her to take her back to the ship.
Yeah. And again, this is, I think, where the chapter titles came in, was they're like, a plan forms, and then the fight happens, and then it's a different plan forms. And I'm like, what is happening?
I guess we had to regroup, but okay, we're back on the ship now. Hope you didn't miss it. So she's trying to tell a story to keep Hook distracted while the fairies free the Lost Boys and her shadow frees Peter. So basically she's distracting them with the stories instead of solving the problem, because I thought she was going to tell a story and just like with the first, something was going to happen, but it didn't. Anyway, Wendy has this moment where she reveals that Neverland is changing because there's a lost girl, and it's also aging because of Slightly. I feel like there was a point being made there, but...
Yeah, I feel like the point that they were trying to make was Hook was like, this is my destiny. Like, this is what I have to do.
This is what I do over and over again.
Exactly. And she's like, but you don't have to. She's trying to appeal. You can change. Obviously, Neverland is capable of change, blah, blah, blah. You don't have to be like this. But he's like, nah.
Yeah, I'm like Peter. We're a perfect match.
A little bit. That's kind of the point.
But the crocodile shows up and Hook has a panic attack, so they're able to talk him down.
And everyone's like, yeah, he real crazy, so we're finally going to just own that and basically do a soft mutiny against Hook.
Yeah. Where's Luna at this point?
Nowhere. She was supposedly there.
Yeah, she was supposedly there, but now we're all celebrating, and Luna's nowhere to be seen, just in time for Hook to be like, hey, first of all, Smee never existed, but, I mean, I've already made my qualms clear with that.
Yeah.
But he realized that he set up a bomb to go off, so he doesn't even care. The bomb's going to take everyone out.
Anyway, Yeah, so what's the point?
And so the pirates, the Lost Boys, Wendy, Peter, the fairies, all two of them work together to try to figure out where the bomb is. And so Wendy points out the obvious answer that the pirates really should have pointed out earlier.
Yeah, Hook literally told Zane, yeah, I need to go Skull Rock. Of course that's where it is. You didn't go anywhere else.
Yeah, he's like, I need to go to Skull Rock to put some stuff there. Why don't you guys party? And so they partied and he put stuff there. It was explosives.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. So they head to Skull Island. By the way, Wendy blows a kiss at Thorn. I have questions.
Yeah, I don't know.
At the island, the place is just been completely covered. So Tink goes in alone to disarm the bombs because they can't get it to it in time. Okay, that seems a little contrite, but Peter couldn't care less.
Nope.
Tinkerbell's risking her life right now.
He was so caught up on like, wait, you blew a kiss to Thorn. Why'd you do that?
So that's weird. Also, the shadows are playing Cat's Cradle, and I have questions. Where did they pick up a shadow string?
That's fair. Or can they interact with material objects?
Can they just steal shadows? This opens up so many plot holes.
Yeah.
What is shadow magic? Anyway, the bomb goes off.
And there are no consequences.
No. Not even Peter being like, oh, I should have cared about her.
Nothing happens.
They find Tink and they think she's dead, but she's not. So it's okay.
And the whole thing was Hook was going to use the explosives to blow up all of Neverland.
All of Neverland!
The whole idea was this was supposed to wipe Neverland and everybody off the map. The bomb goes off, nothing happens, doesn't even kill Tink, and you're like, oh, okay, well, nothing. No consequences.
You have significantly misunderstood the amount of Skull Rock is so big. So big.
Yeah.
It's filled with... that's a little YA for me. You might as well not have had the bomb go off, honestly.
Yeah.
But whatever. So Zane takes over the ship because he's the only pirate we really care about. And he is very kind to Hook because they're going to set him up on an island with a caretaker.
Yeah, that was very nice. Yeah, I'll make sure someone takes care of him. Don't worry.
We know he's mentally ill.
Let's just go squirrel him away to his own island.
Zane offers Skipper a job. I was expecting slightly, but I guess Skipper works.
Yeah.
And they sail away, but probably not forever. Okay. So Peter isn't happy with change, but the Lost Boys have become the found people.
Yep.
Why not?
And he bows to everything so easy. I mean, again, it's hearkening back to a child. They're like, well, no, I don't like that. And you're like, but here's why. And they're like, okay, makes sense.
Yeah. I doubt how seriously his arguments with Slightly were at this point.
Yeah, just felt like more of a big deal.
Oh, well. Peter offers to give Slightly more leadership opportunities. That's going to last for all of 3 seconds.
Yeah, right?
Until he actually tries to use some of that leadership.
Yeah.
It's like when a kid hands you something, but wants you to immediately hand it back.
Bad object permanence.
Terrible.
Of leadership responsibilities.
Well, terrible foresight of, I want to give you the thing, but not realizing then I won't have the thing.
Exactly.
And I want the thing. That's what that is. So Wendy decides to go home and make the world a better place.
Yep.
But first she and Tink go to see a dragon, and we're not going to learn anything about that.
Yeah.
Okay. But back at home, she becomes a suffragette?
That word. Or suffragette.
And not an abolitionist, because I'm not 100% sure what time period this is, but I think we're past the transatlantic slave trade at this point. So I'm not sure if she would be called an abolitionist, but she's an anti-racist. She does protests for people of color.
Yep.
And the author does John and Michael dirty. So she grows up and she's an adult now, has her own thing, works at these events. And she says, oh, even John and Michael help. And you're thinking, oh, that's really awesome. They had a sister. They understand. They empathize. No, they're just trying to score women.
Yeah, she's like, but it could also just be because of the fiery passion of the women that show up to these events. You're like, okay, well, geez.
Why'd you do them dirty?
I mean, listen, we have no reason to like them at this point. Why did you have to make it worse?
At least John understands he wants an equally educated partner and not just someone that would do his every whim. I could totally see that.
Yeah.
And I could totally see Michael being the youngest with an eldest sister who is very feminist to think, oh, I also would like that in someone. That's what familial love is to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. Why?
One last shot in the knee.
Yeah. But Tinkerbell comes to tea, and Snowball got adopted by one of the twins. But screw Luna. We're never going to talk about her ever again.
No, well, I guess she can't come back from Neverland.
Not going to ask about her either.
Nope.
Screw her. She just disappeared from the book. Okay.
Yep. And she was never seen again.
So, general thoughts. We're back to chapter names, which is a mixture of places and titles. But I like the chapter names. I don't know how I felt about them in Beauty and the Beast, which is the last time I think we had them. Because last Liz book, it was the name of the POV over each chapter. And so the last time we've seen that is Beauty and the Beast, which sometimes they were cute, but then most of the times I didn't like them. I really like the chapter headings on these books.
Yeah, reading it through the audiobook, the way everything was broken up was a little choppy sometimes, and so sometimes it was really hard to tell what was a chapter title and what was a sentence.
Yeah.
Because some of them were a little long, but yeah, it didn't distract, I guess.
Yeah. And I don't know what Liz did differently this time around, but I liked her imagination for Wonderland. She comes up with a lot of really cool things. And the fourth wall breaking gave me some really hardcore Lemony Snicket vibes. And anything that reminds me of Lemony Snicket's is automatically 100% amazing in my book.
Yeah.
So the next one she does is Unbirthday, right?
Yeah, Unbirthday. So we've got Elizabeth Lim next with This Is Love and then Unbirthday.
Which, let's do our every episode thing. Yep, Aladdin's not there. Unbirthday isn't there on the Disney site. I've used the wiki fandom because Disney just deletes books.
Yeah.
I don't see any others seem to be deleted.
I agree with you. Once Upon a Dream wasn't horrible in the sense that she was able to have the creativity of I am writing within someone's imagination.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing for this one. And so I'm hopeful that it'll set up the same thing for Unbirthday, right? Because the place that they go, down the rabbit hole isn't real.
Yeah.
And so she seems to be doing best when she's not writing in a fake world, but writing within someone's imagination.
Yeah. And that's why I don't mind that she has Alice in Wonderland next.
Yeah.
I think she's going to do Wonderland really well.
Yeah.
One question for the author. I'm really curious what her research method is for these books. I assume she takes at least minimum the movie, but I'm curious, does she look at notes from them? Does she look at the original story it was based off? Does she look at all the side things that Disney does? There's a lot of side things, so probably not too much, but I'm curious how deep she goes with her research.
Yeah, that is a good question, especially with how now, like you said, the mermaid piece has come into play now in 2 separate books.
Back to back. Curiouser and curiouser, but yes, I'm curious.
Yes. My question is, I was reflecting on the book as I finished it, and I was like, this book should actually just be called Wendy and Tinkerbell Becoming Friends and what it's like to make female friends. And so I was just thinking, with how horrible Tink was, are your female friends treating you okay? Do you need some good girlfriends? Because I hope that you don't have just a bunch of jealous, petty, manic pixie dream girls in your life who are you're struggling to be friends with.
Literally manic pixie dream girls.
Yeah, right?
She has a tendency to be manic. She is a pixie. She is part of a dream land, and she is a girl.
Yes, Tinkerbell is the original manic pixie dream girl.
The literal. That's fair. This is not the ideal female friendship. I appreciate that they were able to bridge that gap, but
yeah, and I mean, they did.
If this is how all your female friendships are starting, I'm concerned.
Yeah, this is rough. But I mean, it is a little bit iconic of you guys come together over a boy, and then you're like, actually, screw that. Let's just be friends.
Screw him. Forget it. Well, at least one of them had to be like, screw it, because I'm still a little worried about Tinkerbell and Peter Pan, but that's beside the point.
A little bit. Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know if you've noticed, but since I had a crush on him as a child, I rethought that. Oh my gosh. Rating. Becoming friends with a fairy out of 10.
Yeah.
You're not really sure what to expect. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. But hey, it's something you will never forget. Although I don't know. I'm not going to call this book unforgettable. I take that back. But it was something. It was an adventure. There we go.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would rate it Learning to Fly out of 10.
But actually, not just the theoretical learning to fly, but actually having to do the learning to fly.
Yeah, a little bit more whiplashy than you'd give it credit for. Doesn't always go the way you expected, but you got, I guess, something neat out of it.
Yeah. Read again. Maybe.
Yeah, I think maybe.
I'm going to pull my husband here and say I have a lot of other books I want to read, so I don't necessarily know if I would go back to this one to enjoy it.
Yeah, with a bunch of people on the Twisted Tale series, people are coming to me like, so is it worth it? And I'm like, no, don't. Mulan, as we've said, has been the only one that we're like, yes, read it, it's good. This one, I came into this ready to rip it apart with you, but the more I kind of went through it, I'm like, okay, it actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
It's competent.
There were some parts that worked. And there were some parallelisms.
And some symbolism, and I'm sure if we analyzed it.
Yeah, but then there were too many plot conveniences and just literal dropped plots completely.
So many drop plots. Agreed. Favorite in the series so far, Mulan.
Still Mulan. This is probably coming up at my close second, though.
I don't know. Elizabeth Lim is coming back for My Girl Cinderella.
Oh yeah, I have really high hopes for the next one.
So I'm curious to see if Mulan is about to be dethroned.
Yeah, we'll see.
But have you read this book? Original Peter Pan or Peter Pan 2?
Or the real life version.
If you haven't watched Peter Pan 2, I do recommend it. Though it has been a while since I've seen it, so don't hold me to that too tightly. Do you have any book recommendations for us? Tell us all about it in the comments below. If you like the video, hit like. And if you're enjoying yourself, hit subscribe for more. Thank you for exploring Straight On Till Morning with us. Join us next time when we'll be covering Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. Oh dear. I'm Sam Reiner.
And I'm Caitlin.
And we hope to see you and a friend here next time. Escape with Me Book Club is a Lunar Skulk production. Check us out on TikTok or Instagram to keep up to date with us. Lunar_SKULK.